Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm 23 years old. For as long as I can remember, I believed family was the safest place on earth. My sister Ashley and I grew up like two halves of the same heartbeat, inside jokes, whispered secrets, and the kind of loyalty that felt unbreakable. When life got heavier after high school, I promised myself I'd carry as much as I could so Ashley wouldn't have to. By day, I worked a full-time job. By night, I picked up shifts that no one wanted. I told my parents, Brenda and James, that I was managing, but the truth was messier. I was barely keeping up with school assignments, laundry piles, and overdue bills. Still, I kept one decision quiet. I took a late-night part-time job so I could cover Ashley's college tuition shortfalls. It wasn't glamorous, mopping floors at closing, inventory at 2 a.m., counting tips that smelled like coffee and bleach, but every dollar I tucked away felt like a quiet promise to my sister. You won't fall. I won't let you. Sometimes I'd come home so tired I'd forget my shoes at the door and wake up with my backpack still on. On those nights, I'd find a text from Ashley, selfies with friends, jokes about a professor, a quick love you that fueled me like caffeine. I wanted her to thrive. I wanted her to finish with the freedom I never really had. There were tiny cracks I chose not to see, a designer jacket that didn't match her tight budget, brunch photos that didn't add up with studying all day, a casual borrowed expense that never circled back. I told myself it was noise, that good intentions mattered more than perfect accounting, that sisters don't keep score. If there was a moment I can pinpoint as the beginning of the unraveling, it's a quiet Tuesday after midnight. I came home from my second shift, dropped my keys, and stared at my reflection in the microwave door, red eyes, split ends, a smile I could only fake. For the first time, I wondered whether love without boundaries was still love, or just a slow way to disappear. I shook the thought away. Ashley was my sister. I was her net. That's what family did. I reminded myself of that truth until it felt like prayer. I didn't know it yet, but the cost of carrying someone else without limits isn't just exhaustion. It's the silence where your own needs go to die. One evening, after a day that had chewed me up and spit me out, I found myself standing outside Ashley's bedroom door. My chest felt heavy, my eyes burned from fatigue, and for the first time, I didn't want to carry everything alone. I wanted to believe that my sister, the person I trusted most, could also be my anchor. I walked in, sat down on the edge of her bed, and let the words tumble out. I told her about the constant pressure, about juggling late-night shifts and early classes, about the exhaustion that made my hands shake when I tried to study. I told her that sometimes, when I walked home from work at 3 a.m., I cried quietly into the night because I was terrified of failing her, failing myself. Ashley listened in silence, nodding at all the right places. I thought I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes, the kind of empathy I had always shown her. When I finished, I whispered, "Please, just don't tell anyone. I don't want people to think I'm weak." She reached over, squeezed my hand, and said softly, "You can trust me, Hannah. This stays between us. Always." Her words soothed me. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of release, like maybe I didn't have to fight this battle completely alone. I left her room believing that I had someone in my corner, that my sacrifices meant something, that my trust was safe. But trust, I would soon learn, is the most fragile glass. And in Ashley's hands, it would shatter into 1,000 sharp pieces I could never gather again. At first, I didn't notice anything. Life looked the same. Alarm clocks, long shifts, crumpled notebooks, and my phone lighting up with Ashley's casual texts. But within a few days, a strange chill began creeping into my world. Friends who used to greet me warmly now looked at me with hesitation. Conversations would go quiet when I walked into the room. Smiles felt forced. Their laughter held an edge I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off as paranoia until one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Julia, a mutual friend we both trusted. "Hannah, I think you should know what Ashley's been saying about you." My stomach sank. With trembling fingers, I opened the messages. Julia explained that Ashley had been sharing pieces of the very conversation I thought was safe. But it wasn't just that. She had twisted my words, painting me as manipulative, selfish, even unstable. She told people I was using my stress story to make her feel guilty, that I played the victim to get sympathy. According to Ashley, I wasn't a devoted sister. I was a burden she had to carry. Reading those words felt like being punched in the chest. I couldn't breathe. I replayed that night in her room, her promise. "You can trust me, Hannah. This stays between us." And now, my confession had become her weapon. The weight of betrayal was heavier than any job, any sleepless night. It was the realization that the one person I'd sacrificed everything for had chosen to turn me into a villain in my own story. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat on the floor of my tiny apartment, staring at the wall, wondering how long Ashley had been rehearsing this version of me to others. Trust had been broken, not in a loud explosion, but in quiet whispers that left me stranded in the dark. And yet, worse truths were waiting, truths about the sacrifices I had made and where they had really gone. The next blow came fast, like the second wave after you've barely come up for air. Julia called me that weekend, her voice careful, almost apologetic. "Hannah, there's more you should know." She'd seen screenshots, transactions and photos from nights out, brands that didn't match, barely making tuition. Then my parents, Brenda and James, reached out. Mom's text was short. "We need to talk about Ashley's tuition." When I called, Dad didn't waste time. "Her bursar's office says you haven't paid in weeks," he said, puzzled. "Ashley told us she was covered." Covered. The word echoed. I opened my budgeting app, thumb hovering over the ledger I'd kept like a private vow. Deposits from late shifts, transfers marked for Ashley. Every dollar I'd funneled into what I thought was her future. The math didn't lie, but neither did the notifications on Ashley's public stories. A weekend beach trip, a new jacket, a table crowded with drinks under neon light. The tuition portal confirmed it. Fees overdue. A warning about enrollment hold. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My sacrifices had not only been betrayed, they'd been misused. I wasn't funding her education. I was subsidizing a life she wanted people to believe she deserved. Something in me went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from peace, the kind that comes from a fracture too deep for words. I packed a duffel with the steadiness of someone who's already made the decision she's afraid to say out loud. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a cheap week-to-week room near my job, thin walls, a humming mini-fridge, a window that stuck halfway when you tried to open it. 2 days later, I signed a month-to-month lease on a small studio that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and new paint. I bought 2 plates, 1 pan, and a second-hand lamp. I slept on a borrowed mattress on the floor and, for the first time in months, set my alarm for only one job. When Ashley called, I let it ring. When she texted, "We need to talk," I put my phone face down and focused on the breath moving in and out of my chest like I had to relearn it. That evening, I wrote a single sentence in my notebook. I can love someone and still refuse to be their ladder. I turned off auto transfers to her account. I closed the tuition tab. I folded the version of me that believed love meant limitless and put it away. The silence in that studio wasn't lonely. It was honest. And honesty, after so much spin, felt like the first real thing I'd had in a long time. It didn't take long for the cracks in Ashley's perfect facade to widen. Without my quiet deposits holding her life together, the late fees piled up, notices arrived in bold red letters, and her social circle started to fray. Julia told me that Ashley had been skipping classes, failing exams, and making excuses that didn't add up. Friends who once adored her stopped inviting her out. The same people she'd manipulated with twisted stories about me now began to see her true colors. At first, she called me endlessly, voicemails dripping with fake sweetness. "Hannah, I miss you. Can we talk? Please? You don't understand." Then came the texts, long, frantic, and filled with apologies that sounded rehearsed. When I ignored them, she started showing up outside my apartment building. I'd spot her leaning against the steps, mascara smudged, clutching her phone like a lifeline. One night, after I slipped inside unnoticed, my phone buzzed with a message from her. "Why are you doing this to me? You've ruined everything." I remember staring at the screen in disbelief. I had given her everything, my money, my time, my sanity, and now she wanted me to feel guilty for taking my life back. Then, as if to twist the knife, my parents reached out again. Mom's voice was shaky over the phone. Hannah, she's in trouble. Ashley failed 2 courses. If she doesn't pay the balance, she'll be suspended. She needs you. I sat in silence, my heart torn but my resolve unshaken. Finally, I said, I've already done enough, Mom. More than enough. If Ashley is struggling, it's because of her own choices. There was a pause, long, heavy, filled with disappointment I could almost hear in my mother's breath. But I didn't waver. I couldn't. Meanwhile, Jenna, one of my few friends who had stayed loyal, reminded me, you don't owe her your future. You've paid your debt in full. Her words gave me strength, a reminder that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-destruction. Ashley's downfall was happening in slow motion, and though part of me ached to step in, I knew I couldn't. She had burned the bridge with her own hands, and I was finally learning that it wasn't my job to rebuild it. Weeks passed, and Ashley's desperation grew louder. The calls came less with anger and more with trembling apologies. One evening, my phone lit up with a long message from her. Hannah, I messed up. I lied, I twisted things I used to. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I don't know who I am anymore. I've started therapy. I'm trying to change. I read it over and over, waiting for the familiar surge of guilt, but it never came. Instead, there was only a hollow ache. For the first time, I realized the power wasn't in her words, it was in my choice of what to do with them. Later that week, she asked to meet at a quiet cafe we used to visit together. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I walked in, Ashley was already there, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She didn't look like the sister I grew up with. She looked like someone weighed down by her own lies. Her voice shook as she spoke. I can't take back what I did. I hurt you, Hannah. I betrayed you. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered the months of manipulation, the way she'd painted me as a villain while I broke myself to build her up. I set my coffee cup down and met her eyes. Ashley, I forgive you. But understand this. My forgiveness isn't a ticket back into my life. It's for me, not for you. You wanted me to carry you forever, but I won't. Not anymore. Her lip trembled, tears filling her eyes. So that's it? You're just done with me? I nodded. Yes. I've made peace with the past, but I won't let you rewrite my future. She cried openly then, her sobs echoing in the small cafe. People turned to look, but I felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one apologizing, explaining, or sacrificing. I was simply free. When I stood to leave, Ashley reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently. Goodbye, Ashley. I hope you find the person you keep pretending to be. I walked out into the cool evening air, the weight of her tears behind me, the taste of freedom sharp and clean on my tongue. The weeks after that cafe felt like stepping out of a long tunnel and into honest daylight. My apartment still had scuffed floors and a stubborn window, but it felt like mine, quiet, clean, and free of the chaos I used to call love. I rearranged my schedule, dropped the graveyard shifts, and started showing up to myself the way I used to show up for everyone else. At work, I volunteered for projects I'd avoided because I was always exhausted. My manager noticed. Small wins stacked into real momentum, clear reports, calm presentations, solutions I could explain without my voice shaking. It was a slow, steady rise, the kind you don't brag about, because it doesn't need applause. It just needs you. Jenna became my checkpoint friend. We met on Thursdays, no drama, no rehashing, just honest conversation and the kind of laughter that scrubs a week clean. I cooked more, slept more, and read in the blue hush of evening, discovering a quiet pleasure in finishing what I started. Chapters, workouts, boundaries. Meanwhile, news about Ashley reached me in fragments, mostly through Julia. The suspension notice came first. Then the scholarship gone. Friends who once posted photos arm in arm with her stopped tagging her altogether. Doors she'd kicked open with charm began to shut with finality. She moved from one couch to another, apologizing to people who had heard it all before. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. But I didn't rush in either. Every time my phone lit up with her name, I felt a tug, old instincts asking me to rescue the same person who had lit the match. I'd inhale, exhale, and let the call fade to silence. One evening, Brenda called, voice softer than I remembered. "Your father and I spoke to Ashley," she said. "She says she's getting help. She wants to come home." I stared at the city lights outside my window. "If she's getting help, that's good," I said. "But my boundary stands." There was a pause. "We understand," Mom replied, and for the first time, I believed her. Maybe they were finally seeing the truth about Ashley and about me. In therapy, yes, I finally went. My counselor asked a simple question. If your life didn't revolve around fixing someone else, what would it look like? I surprised myself with the answers. Weekend classes I wanted to take, a savings goal with my name on it, a future that wasn't a reaction to someone else's chaos. I set timelines. I kept them. Ashley tried one last grand gesture. An email, long and raw, where she detailed everything she was working on. I read it carefully, then wrote back a single paragraph. "I'm glad you're getting help. I wish you healing. But my life can't be the place you practice being better. Not anymore." I hit send. The cursor blinked for a beat that felt like closure. And then, quietly, I lived, deeply, deliberately. My life didn't explode into fireworks. It unfolded like morning, light finding its way into corners I had once abandoned. I learned that peace isn't loud. It's a door that locks from the inside and a calendar with your own name on it. Ashley was finally facing the shape of her choices without me standing between her and the consequences. And I, finally, was facing the shape of my own life, unburdened. Months turned into a year, and life steadied in ways I once thought were impossible. My days were full, but not overwhelming. I had friends who knew me not as the sister of Ashley, but simply as Hannah, a woman with her own ambitions, her own voice, her own worth. My career was rising slowly but surely, and for the first time, I was saving money for myself, not draining every cent for someone else's comfort. Ashley's name still surfaced from time to time. Julia mentioned once that Ashley had moved out of state, trying to start over. Rumors circled. She lost another job, another friend group, another chance. Each story was tinted with the same pattern: manipulation, disappointment, fallout. But this time, I wasn't part of the cycle. One late evening, I received an unexpected call from her. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity overruled me. Her voice was fragile, almost broken. "Hannah, I know you don't owe me anything. I don't have anyone left. Everyone's gone." There was a silence where my old self might have rushed in with comfort. But not anymore. I steadied my breath and said calmly, "Ashley, I hope you find your way. But I can't walk it for you. Not again." Her quiet sob on the other end confirmed what I already knew. She was finally facing the loneliness she had built with her own hands. For years, she had believed that someone, me, our parents, her friends, would always catch her. Now, there was no one. I hung up, not in anger, but in acceptance. Forgiveness had already happened in my heart, not for her sake, but for mine. But reconciliation was a door I had closed and locked for good. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights stretch out like a constellation of choices. My reflection in the glass looked stronger than the girl who once cried quietly on midnight walks home from work. I whispered to myself, "You kept standing, Hannah. You rebuilt." The truth settled over me like a calm I had earned. Ashley was alone because she had chosen betrayal over trust. I was free because I had chosen myself over sacrifice without limits. The lesson was sharp but clear. Betrayal may gain someone a momentary advantage, but in the end, it leaves them isolated, disgraced, and empty. I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. My life was mine, unchained, and finally whole. In the end, I chose myself and walked away stronger, while her betrayal left her completely alone. That was my revenge, and it taught me the true meaning of freedom. If you want to hear more powerful stories like mine, make sure to subscribe to Revenge Repeat because every betrayal deserves its ending.